Captain America is one of the most interesting characters in the MCU to me because of how steadfast and faithful he is. In fact, he's like an anchor for the Avengers. Plus, he's worthy to lift Mjolnir and smack Thanos in the face with it. Yeah, let's look a little deeper into the Winter Soldier. Welcome to Durbania, I'm Durbin, and this is my Patreon-requested theological analysis for Captain America, the Winter Soldier. I'm excited to look a little deeper into this movie. I did this about 3 years ago with two friends. We did a great analysis, had a great time with it, but I'm excited to revisit this with a fresh look and a fresh perspective, courtesy of the Crazy Hedgehog Lady. That is probably one of the coolest usernames I've come across on Patreon. Thank you so much, the Crazy Hedgehog Lady, for becoming a new patron of Durbania. Your support means more to me than you realize. The Crazy Hedgehog Lady, she gave at the level where she could pick a theological analysis for me to do. So if you want to check out my Patreon page and check out those levels of giving, I have the link to that in the description.
That humanity is finally ready to sacrifice its freedom to gain its security.
The price of freedom is high. It always has been. And it's a price I'm willing to pay.
I just did this video about Anakin Skywalker in Star Wars Episode 3 and how Palpatine was able to deceive Anakin because he had no firm foundation for his life. He had nothing solid that his life was built on. So when the philosophy of the dark side came, whispering these things that sounded so good, he was easily taken in. I said he reminded me of Peter, how Peter was in the boat and Jesus was walking on the water, and when Peter kept his eyes on Jesus, he was able to do the impossible and walk on water. But the moment he took his eyes off and looked at the wind and the waves, he sank under those waves. And that was Anakin Skywalker. There were moments where his eye would go to the right place, but he was torn in two directions because he had no firm foundation for his life, and ultimately he was able to be twisted by the dark side. With Captain America, we're seeing the exact opposite. This guy has a firm foundation for his life. When you look at the MCU, I think Captain America is the most consistent character throughout the entire thing. He is the most steadfast character. I think he is the anchor of the Avengers because of his character, because of his steadfastness. And the amazing thing about him is he's always been like that. Through all the growth and maturity this character has had throughout the MCU, the one thing that has remained the same and the one thing that has remained consistent is his good heart. Before he even had the serum, back in World War II, when he's this little skinny kid, he wanted to be a soldier. He wanted to do his part. Not for acclaim or anything like that, but simply because he felt like it was the right thing to do.
There are men laying down their lives. I got no right to do any less than them.
And when he got the serum, it didn't change him. It didn't change his heart. In his mind, all the serum did and the power that it gave him was just a means with which he could serve. And that's exactly what he did. And that's what he has been doing throughout the entirety of the MCU. But when you dive into the Winter Soldier gives us a very interesting look at Captain America trying to adjust to a new world.
Wow. Things aren't so bad. Food's a lot better. We used to boil everything. No polio's good. Internet, so helpful.
A world that's a little bit disillusioning to him. And even though it's disillusioning, he has that same steady and steadfast heart because of the firm foundation that it's built on. He's now in a world where people are looking to hand over their freedoms to whom? Who knows? To S.H.I.E.L.D? Maybe. But they're just looking to hand over their freedoms to whomever just to feel a little bit more secure. The disillusionment is he laid his life down for freedom, to give people freedom. And it's got to be hard for him to see that. And have Nick Fury say, we have Project Insight, so we're going to send our helicarriers up into the sky and they're going to link to satellites and we're going to neutralize threats before they even happen. And I love what Captain America says about that.
By holding a gun to everyone on Earth and calling it protection. This isn't freedom. This is fear.
Yeah, I think I 100% agree with Captain America. Now, when you look at Captain America dealing with disillusionment and dealing with a little bit of confusion in this, it's different than what Anakin Skywalker went through. Because even though he's disillusioned and even though he's dealing with some confusion, the confusion is, well, where do I fit in this world and what do I do now?
For as long as I can remember, I just wanted to do what was right. I guess I'm not quite sure what that is anymore.
Like, that's where his confusion is. And Sam, I think, had a fantastic suggestion for him.
To be honest, I don't know what I would do with myself if I did.
Ultimate fighting? Just a great idea off the top of my head.
I mean, that would just be flipping awesome, wouldn't it?
Before we get started, does anyone want to get out?
So even though he was confused, even though he was looking for a place to belong and for something to do in this world, he knew exactly what he believed. His life was on that firm foundation, so much so that everybody else knew where they stood with him. So when you look at S.H.I.E.L.D., who knows where you stand with that? When you look at Nick Fury, who knows where you stand with him?
You need to keep both eyes open.
Oh, motherfucking!
Why? Because S.H.I.E.L.D. is in the dark and the shadows and deals with secrecy. Captain America, he lives in the light, he is honest, and he is genuine. You know where sin thrives? It thrives in secrecy. It thrives when it's hiding in the shadows. And guess what's thriving inside of S.H.I.E.L.D. right now?
The new Hydra grew, a beautiful parasite inside S.H.I.E.L.D.
Hydra has been feeding crises to the world to destabilize it. When things weren't going their way, they sent out the Winter Soldier to make things go their way just so that they could destabilize the world, so the world would be afraid enough to, of their own free will, hand over their freedoms to the enemy. But Captain America was not taken in by this fear because the firm foundation of his life.
Well, you seem pretty chipper for someone who just found out they died for nothing.
Wow. Guess I just like to know who I'm fighting.
What is that firm foundation? I think we see what it is in the first Avengers movie.
They're basically gods.
There's only one God, man. And I'm pretty sure he doesn't dress like that.
So God has given both his promise and his oath. These two things are unchangeable because it is impossible for God to lie. Therefore, we who have fled to him for refuge can have great confidence as we hold to the hope that lies before us. This hope is a strong and trustworthy anchor for our souls. God's promises never change because God never lies. When we come to God, we know where we stand with him. We know he has this unconditional love for us. And when we put our lives on his promises and we keep our eyes on him, it gives us a firm ground to stand on. I fully believe that's where Steve Rogers is. He has this firm ground to stand on. And it's so firm, in fact, that when things go down, when it all goes wrong, where does Nick Fury go first? To the one person he could trust, because that one person is not two-faced and not disingenuous. He goes straight to Steve Rogers first. He knows that he could trust Steve Rogers. Same thing with Black Widow. These characters know that they could trust him because he lives his life in the light and he is genuine and he is strong of character. They know that they can go to him. Now, here's the thing that's kind of scary. When we look at God that way and we go to plant our lives on him and make him our firm foundation, we know where we stand with him. And that can get kind of scary because sometimes we feel guilty. We feel like we've made so many horrible, horrible mistakes, and sometimes we just forget who we really are. We've been so twisted by stuff in our lives. But that's Bucky. That's the picture of Bucky in this movie. Bucky has been twisted up by Hydra and brainwashed. Others keep telling Steve, he's not who he was in the past. You're gonna have to do what you have to do. And you know what? He did. He fought for Bucky. He reminded Bucky of who he really was.
Your name is James Buchanan Barnes. You're my friend.
He looked past the assassinations. He looked past the sins. He looked past the twistings, and he called out the man that he knew was underneath all of that. And at that moment, Steve Rogers drops his shield, opens himself up, and is not even fighting Bucky.
I'm not gonna fight you.
Instead, he's calling out to him saying, I'm with you until the end of the line. At this point, it becomes this picture of Jesus and us, because that's what Jesus says. I am with you even until the very end of the age. I am with you until the end of the line. But we fight back. I mean, here's Bucky beating the tar out of Steve Rogers. Why? Because he doesn't feel like Bucky. He doesn't feel like that good and more innocent guy that he was. And as he's standing there in the light, there's this resistance. And so the fight that's occurring here is not Captain America fighting Bucky, it's Bucky. And sometimes the resistance in our lives is not God contending with us. We're contending with him because we feel so dirty. But there is God calling out who we really are. And he should know he made us. He sees past the twisting of sin. He sees past the twisting of bad choices. He sees past the fact that we can forget who we really are. And he sees that truth and he calls it out with unconditional love. You want to know where you stand with God? He loves you completely and unconditionally. He's not looking to hurl lightning bolts at you or throw judgment at you. He's looking to forgive and show you that and give you a foundation upon which you can build and which you can stand, in which whatever storm comes, it won't knock it down.
You're my mission. Then finish it. Because I'm with you to the end of the line.
What did you think of Captain America, the Winter Soldier, and who is your favorite MCU hero? Let's have an MCU discussion right there in the comments. I want to say a huge thank you to the Crazy Hedgehog Lady. Thank you so much for becoming a new patron and the poetic way in which you requested that this be my next theological analysis, coming out of Anakin Skywalker with no foundation into Captain America with a firm foundation. That was pretty awesome. So thank you so much for that request, and thank you for being a patron of Durbania. If you would like to be a patron, I have the link to my Patreon page in my description. And while you're there, hit that subscribe button to become a Durbanian. Hit the bell by the subscribe button so you're notified for my next theological analysis, movie review, ranking video, or anything else I do here. I'm Durbin. Thanks for checking out Durbania.